And good afternoon, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News, coming to you from our digital desk. This is our segment we do weekly called From Someone Who Knows. It's a chance for us to take a topic or a story and expand on it, do more than you can see on Channel 19. You might get to see a couple of minutes of a story, but here, because we're on our digital platforms, it's going to be a much longer version. And this week, we have chosen the tragedy down in Tuscarawas County at Atwood Lake. It all played out last weekend. A husband and wife that were Amish, of the old order Amish, apparently, according to authorities, had been misinterpreting the Bible and what they were being asked to do to show their faith. It started with the mom and dad, the husband and wife here, putting themselves into Atwood Lake at about 1 in the morning, performing different tasks because they claimed that they had been talked to by God to show their faith. It ends with the husband drowning in the lake trying to perform these tasks. And then it goes to a whole nother level. The mother, who we now know is Ruth Miller, 40 years old, she then throws her 4-year-old child into the lake as an offering to God, according to what she told the sheriff, deputies, and the investigators in Tuscarawas County. It is a topic so hard to get your head around and to try and grasp that we thought we should play the news conference from the Tuscarawas County Sheriff. He did an incredible job of laying out all the facts. It goes from the husband and wife swimming in the lake, to the husband dying, to the drowning of the 4-year-old child, to then the mother driving her teenage daughter and twin boys into the lake with a golf cart, apparently attempting to offer them up to God as well. Again, it is such a bizarre story. In my almost 30 years career as a journalist, I don't know that I've ever quite seen anything like this. So we want you to listen to the sheriff as he plays out, as he lays out exactly what happened and just how difficult it is to understand. We're going to play this in 3 parts. The first 2 parts are about 5 minutes long, the second part about 8.5 minutes. But it is important to see all of the details laid out by the sheriff. So let's get to From Someone Who Knows.
As I go along here, I don't have anything prepared. I'm just going to kind of go through it honestly as I can and kind of try to make it make sense to you. It's been very difficult. If you saw us stepping out of the room, there were developments taking place constantly. That's why we had to set up a time for 2, and we couldn't do separate interviews. It's something that's been going on all day. I'll have a couple of slides up here just to kind of help give you guys an orientation to the lake area and what was taking place. So this call began at about 10:39 a.m. on Saturday, which is August 23rd. 911 received a call of a golf cart that had gone into Atwood Lake. And at the time that we received the call, people didn't realize what it was. It looked as though it could have been an unintentional event. There could have just been an accident, but it was a woman and 3 children on that golf cart. There were actually people, according to witnesses, chasing the lady, the golf cart, through the grass, yelling at her to hit the brakes because they thought it was, careening out of control. We later find out that that's not the case. As the first witnesses arrived on scene, the golf cart had flipped off the edge of a stone wall, which I'll show you here in a few minutes, and landed in the lake. And it was fully submerged, but it was easily visible. The kids, who were 15 and 18, got out of the vehicle and stood on top of it, and then witnesses thereby helped the woman out of the lake. The first witness that arrives to help is asking the woman, does she need help up? And he tries to help, and she suggests to him not to help her, to just pray for her. And that was the first statement that suggested this was more than an accident at that lake. From there, they did pull her out of the water and Rangers were immediately dispatched to the calls, and upon them arriving on scene, they heard some of the same concerning type statements. There was a pretty immediate statement made that she had given her son to the Lord. Now keep in mind, she's there with a 15-year-old daughter and two 18-year-old sons, and nobody knows what son she's talking about. There's no other child there. And they tried to discern and tried to comfort her. She actually attempted to flee for a minute. She was not rational at that moment. She attempted to flee and hide and was quickly gathered up and brought back to the scene. They were all taken kind of over to the Atwood Welcome Center, where the Rangers began speaking with the children and speaking with the woman, and none of it was just making a lot of sense. There was just a lot of statements that, as we continued to try to put them together, were not rational. Deputies were dispatched to the call about 10:53. I didn't get advised myself until about 11:41, and at this point they're starting to put it together and they realize there's a problem. We may have a 4-year-old child missing. That's a statement coming from the mother and then confirmed by the teenage kids that there's a 4-year-old son missing, and that the husband and father is missing. Now I will tell you, as we all hear that, you can imagine what we're hoping is, we're hoping she's just sick and that the father's got this 4-year-old somewhere in the campground. Both of them are missing, and that's the hope that everybody's trying to gather information for. When I'm contacted, I ask dispatch detectives. In the room with me is Detective Captain Adam Fisher, who was in charge of the case, or is in charge of the case, and other detectives responded, and they're actually on scene on something right now. So we begin searching and trying to delineate her statement. Now, there was a lot of confusion initially about where these parents were, where the father was, where the 4-year-old was, and then she began to express more that she had thrown the child in the water to give that child to God.
It was that statement made by the sheriff in Tuscarawas County on Monday that really sort of sent the first of several shock waves through this story. That this was more than just, as he said, the accident with the golf cart and where the father was the big question. And you have to remember the sheriff is going backwards here. They're starting with the scene they were called to, and they're starting to place back about the last 12 hours of very bizarre, strange events that have happened, and they've just been told that she drowned her 4-year-old son as an offering to God. You can see where the concern was at that point. We're going to take a quick break and come back for part 2 of this discussion from the sheriff in Tuscarawas County. And welcome back to From Someone Who Knows. We're going through the details of that bizarre and tragic story out of Tuscarawas County. It played out last Saturday and Sunday at Atwood Lake. You're looking at the video here. The story ends with a 4-year-old little boy who was thrown into the lake, who was let to drown as an offering to God, according to the little boy's mother when she spoke to authorities. Now, we're going to pick our story back up from there. The detectives had just been told the mother did that as an offering to God, but the sheriff has to go into further details into what he is calling a spiritual delusion. Take a listen.
And then she began to express more that she had thrown the child in the water to give that child to God. But we didn't know where in the water. It's a big lake. It's a lot of places. We didn't know if it was there where the cart had taken place. If you could bring up the first slide. This is a big picture prepared for us by our friends over here at Muskingum Watershed. And the main portion of the lake, when you come in, before you enter the actual park, there's a big marina here and a restaurant. It's pretty well known. And we'll leave this up later if people want to come up and take close-up photos, whatever you want. But she actually drove this golf cart right between these two buildings, and it hit a stone wall there that makes a barrier of the water, and it flips into the water. That's how the call starts. And to be honest with you, it was reported as an accident. That's how the call came into 911, as an accident. Later on, through some discussions, we learned that the individuals had a pontoon boat that belonged to a family company, and it was on an area that we call the Causeway, or is called the Causeway, and it's labeled there as dock. As statements come out, she suggests that she had thrown the 4-year-old in the water off the dock to give to God. Initially, divers were dispatched to that dock area. Nothing was found in the sides of the dock where the boat was. Divers also were working where the golf cart went in. And then at the very top of the picture, you're going to see a circle that says kayak launch. The only thing that took place at that kayak launch was just prior to the golf cart going into the water. The mother and the children were witnessed huddling very closely, heads touching, praying very intently next to the water by the kayak launch. So much so that it actually scared some witnesses. They thought they were crying, they were emotional, and they didn't know what was going on. That was before the crash or anything. So as the search goes on throughout the day and we're checking bodies of water, we learn about this praying incident at the kayak launch. So we had divers in there as well. That's a very shallow area. It was easy. It was an area that we didn't need to do very much at. But I bring it up because I know the social media community was talking about searching at the kayak. It solely took place because they were praying there, and it was described as a concerning moment, and we decided to check that water. The actual incident that we're going to discuss here only took place where the golf cart crashed, and then the rest of it at the dock. Captain Fisher, when he was dispatched, I asked him to go directly to the hospital. So you'll notice that there's some time delay before we get involved, and because she was uncooperative, a decision was made to have her taken to the hospital for evaluation. Her statements were radical. She had run from them and hid in some weeds and was easily captured. Her statements were bouncing around, so they felt the need to get her some medical help. Captain Fisher went straight to the hospital before coming to the scene, and he did his first interview with her at 12:20 that day. It's been one of the most difficult cases placing the statements together, and I want to word this carefully because I don't believe the mother's ever lied to us. But the statements not made sense a lot. And then in a second interview, it made a little more sense, and then we were able to add pieces from the 3 children. We were able to kind of paint a picture. But she's been relatively truthful with us, and she has indicated every time she's been spoken to that she put the 4-year-old in the water to give to God. Now, in her statement, what she says is that She and her husband went to this dock, and they jumped in the water because God was speaking to them and telling them to do things. Things to prove their worthiness to God, to show their faith as complete. And they didn't do very well in those. Some of them were bizarre. Some of them were just swimming exercises. The most bizarre was that God told her to allow herself to be swallowed by a fish, as bizarre as that sounds. And I tell you that statement not to make fun, but I tell you that statement so you can have a picture of how difficult it was to communicate with her. It just wasn't making a lot of sense.
And I think the sheriff should be commended for the information he put out. He could have been very brief, and there would have been all kinds of questions about why did she do this, and you're not explaining why the 4-year-old drowned and how the husband went swimming and he drowned. He paints a very good picture, again, of what he calls a spiritual delusion of God speaking to this couple. And it wasn't just the wife, the husband in this who drowns, Marcus Miller. He too had had conversations with his family. There had been an intervention a couple of days prior to this that their family was concerned that they were misinterpreting the Bible. They thought they had gotten through to the family. They thought the family was going to head to the lake for a nice weekend, and that the family said gave them peace, that they thought the lake would be peaceful for them. They had no idea that this was how everything was going to play out. We're going to take one more break before we get to the longer section of the sheriff's explanation of what happened that day. So stand by. And welcome back to part 3 of today's From Someone Who Knows, investigating and trying to understand the tragic situation and the bizarre set of circumstances that took place out at Atwood Lake last weekend. A mother admitting to investigators that she threw her child into the lake, her 4-year-old son, as an offering to God because she felt she hadn't been worthy. She and her husband had given themselves tasks at Atwood Lake at 1 in the morning, swimming, different exercises to prove their faith to God. And when they felt they weren't faithful enough, the mother went back to the campground. The husband then decides to go for a swim, and it is believed he drowned on his own. You'll hear the sheriff say he was a good swimmer, but not a great swimmer, not a strong swimmer, and that they do not believe the wife had anything to do with the husband's trial that he was undertaking. We're talking about Marcus Miller, a 45-year-old. In the Atwood Lake. So let's get to our third and final section of the explanation of what happened from the sheriff of Tuscarawas County.
They get up out of the water after a while, and they decide it's silly, and they decide to walk back to where they were staying in a family company-owned RV, which was over in this area. We intentionally not pointing out where their camper was, but it was over in that area. So they walked all the way back. When the husband got back to the house, according to the wife, he felt very disappointed in himself because he didn't do very good in his task because he didn't have enough faith. And he turned and immediately said, "I'm going back to the lake to swim to the sandbar." Now, the sandbar, I'm not a lake expert, guys, but the sandbar is way over here somewhere, and he's on this little dock. His brother had told us he could swim, but he wasn't a strong swimmer, and she said he left their RV again at about 5:30 in the morning after getting right back home. Keep in mind, he hasn't been asleep at night, and he's heading back there. For the longest time, we weren't sure if that was true. We didn't know if we could believe her statement. But the following day, we did run into a witness that put him alone at that dock, wearing the clothes that he left behind at the dock at 6:30 a.m. So it's kind of bizarre, but at 1:15, him and his wife go there. They do these tasks. They walk back. Then he walks back alone. And we have a good independent witness that says, yes, I definitely saw him here. He was wearing these clothes, and he wasn't doing anything odd, but he was at the dock by himself. That's at about 6:30 a.m. Saturday morning. Keep in mind now, we're at about 4 hours before the crash. So we're about 4 hours before the crash. She does not see him again. Sometime just after 8 a.m., and this statement from both her children and other independent witnesses, she is seen loading up the 4-year-old on a golf cart near their RV and taking off very erratically. Everybody that will comment, or any witness that you encounter that saw her driving, will tell you she was driving very dangerously. She flipped the cart at one time. She was seen on 2 wheels another time. Of course, she was praying by the kayak. And she left. The children saw her leave with the 4-year-old, and then a while later she came back. She states that she went to the dock and that she threw the 4-year-old in because that's what she needed to do as an offering to God. She drives back to her camper. She picks up the 15-year-old daughter, drives her back to the dock, and makes her get in the lake, and leaves. She drives back one more time, gets her 18-year-old sons, or twins. They come back, and she makes them jump in the lake to do some tasks, and they do. They all survive. They climb out of the lake, and at one point, according to the children, she makes them all lay down on the dock with their hands in the water to pray for their little brother and father because they were gone and had gone to heaven. We have divers now focused in a couple of areas, but our main concern is the dock. It's pitch black underwater. I'm sure you've all experienced swimming in a lake like that. So it's all by feel. It's all by sonar. But at 6:03 p.m., divers located the 4-year-old only about 10 feet off the dock, and at that time he was on the bottom of the lake. We continued searching till about 9:30 p.m. and we had to end the search due to darkness. At 9:44 p.m., Captain Fisher went back to the hospital for a second interview with the mother, and she was able to provide some slightly additional information, which I've already given to you, which was about the husband leaving on his own at 5:30. We resumed the search at 7 o'clock a.m. on Saturday, and the immediate focus is we're going to go much farther out because we understand now that he thinks he's going to swim to the sandbar. We had some concern as to whether or not he jumped in the lake to try to rescue the 4-year-old so he would be close, but now we believe he's on a mission to swim, so he's further out. So the boats start working further out with sonar, trying to locate anything. They did identify a signal or a blip under the water that they thought was suspicious. And at 8:29 a.m., they located the male 53 yards off the end of the dock on the bottom of the lake. And the divers are both telling me in both cases that the bodies were completely rested on the bottom of the lake. For us, obviously the recovery efforts end, but for us, the search warrant continues. About 1:49 p.m., Judge Elizabeth Tamakis here of our Common Pleas Court signs a search warrant, and the guys are going in there. And if you're wondering what we're looking for, we don't have any idea. We're looking for a weapon. We're looking for notes to explain it. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for. Honestly, nothing was found or taken. Photographs. There was a Bible open, you know, and stuff like that. But we found nothing that directly mapped out, you know, what was going to take place that day or anything like that. So now we have the father recovered. He was found in his underwear, his clothes. He had removed his clothes, we believe himself, and laid them on his pontoon boat that the family company had, and went in, we believe, just like she said. Now, I interviewed the children, and I got to speak with the grandparents, and I've developed a relationship with the father's brother. They couldn't be nicer people. As you can imagine, the kids were extremely confused. I can tell you their mindset was that whatever their mother and father says is the way it is. They don't question anything, so when they were told to jump in a lake, they jump in a lake. And that, as a parent of great kids, that's still difficult for me to imagine. I just can't imagine my kids not questioning me, but that's how they're raised, and when you meet them, you can immediately identify that's how they operate. They would try to give us information, but couldn't stop crying. They kept focusing on the fact that they were praying for their dad and little brother, and it was tough to get the information from them because much of what they were given us, they were only told by their mother, so they took it as truth. And then when we would separate, listen, were you told that or did you see it? We got, you know, we got a little further. The kids were then, you know, by law, we would involve Job and Family Services. That took calls to both Tuscarawas and Holmes County because the family resides in Holmes County. And with our blessing and thanks, they were able to release those kids, you know, to the family over there. And we have complete confidence that this family will take excellent care of them.
And it was subsequent interviews with the mother where they found the exact location of where the 4-year-old's body was. They did locate that off the dock, a short ways off the dock in that murky water as well. She has been taken for mental health treatment. As you might imagine, she is still in a mental health facility at this point. She has been criminally charged. We do know that she's being charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of domestic violence, and 1 count of endangering children. Obviously, she has not been arraigned at this point. That will happen at a later date. They are more concerned with her mental health at this point, again, as she is being treated at a local facility there in Tuscarawas County. It is a difficult story to understand, but again, using the words that the sheriff himself uses, this is what he calls a spiritual delusion, that they were misinterpreting passages in the Bible. He would say that the family even tried to hold an intervention on the Thursday night before the weekend that they thought had worked, that the family had agreed that they were in a better place. But apparently it was not, and it had a tragic consequence. That's what this segment is about. That's what From Someone Who Knows is about, where you get more to the story than just what we can air on Channel 19. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to Cleveland 19 and past episodes of From Someone Who Knows. They are varying topics. We pick one topic a week that has interest, that we think people need to get all of the details. They are sometimes tragic, they are sometimes enlightening, but it is a much better in-depth way for you as a viewer to have an understanding. That's going to wrap it up for From Someone Who Knows this week. I'm Dan DeRose, and have a good holiday weekend.